Good morning and welcome everyone to this latest Kepner-Tregoe webcast. The topic this morning is emergency project recovery. So, as I say, welcome everybody. I'm just going to maximize the screen and then you hopefully should have a better view of the slides as we go along. I always like to start with a funny. There used to be a set of posters around in the office that had a caption, "When you're up to your arse in alligators, it's hard to remember the objective was to drain the swamp." And sometimes as project managers, we indeed feel like that, rushing from one thing to another. Today's topic is really what to do when we're in something of a mess. So this is not about how you design effective projects to start with, nor indeed how you work on projects in an agile environment, but it's how do you respond when you have some trouble. So these are some examples of trouble that you might routinely have in your life. Deliverables not materializing. Everybody, I think, has the issue of late changes in scope. People make additional requests and we have this terrible business of scope creep. And there can be some other things. If you are happy to do that, why don't you send me a chat message and tell me what other messy situations you face other than these 5. So if you open up the chat box, if you go to the top of your screen, the chat will appear. If you click on it, and then you can send a chat message in that we can all see and share the kinds of challenges you face with projects that have gone wrong. So let's move on to the advice from this week. Now, those of you who have been to a KT class, I hope that most of you will be familiar with the technique situation appraisal, and there on the right you can see the plastic process card that you'll have received. You might have, if you went on the class earlier, some years earlier, have a slightly different model, but the advice is the same on all of them. Situation appraisal is the means of taking a proper holistic overview, and it can always bring calm to a frantic or worried team. And just a reminder about the rules of situation appraisal. Do list the issues and concerns quickly. One of the key rules of situation appraisal is we do not discuss issues until we're sure the team has all had a chance to say all of the things that worry them. So let's mute those extra participants. It's really important not to discuss until we're sure we have a full list of the issues on a particular occasion when we're reviewing the project. Make sure it's written down and keep the issue list visible. Now, those of you who are experienced project managers will be used to keeping an issue log in any case. That issue log does not need to be hidden in a Word document somewhere. It needs to be somewhere where everybody has access to it and looks at it every day. Maybe it's on a whiteboard, electronic whiteboard, maybe it's in OneNote, but do keep the issue list visible. Importantly, when things go wrong, avoid asking questions about cause. What we seek to do as project managers is understand what's happening and what to do about it. Asking why it went wrong is usually a fruitless exercise in helping us to create a speedy recovery and get a project back on track. So thank you very much from Gerhard. General team motivation going down during a project. And again, when you talk about team motivation, there can be many aspects to motivation, and it's really useful to allow the team to express their fears and worries and say, okay, well, what exactly is it that's troubling you? And what else? And what else? And just allow people to tell and know that you're listening. But avoid questions about cause. Let's have a look at the project framework, because we need to understand how changes to the project scope or changes to the availability of resources or changes to budget or changes to anything else actually affect a project. And here we have a 3-phase, 13-step model of project management that those of you who've been to the KT project management workshop will have seen before. And if you've lost your process card for this ping me separately by email. You'll see my email address at the end of this, and you can get a new plastic card to remind you what this stuff's all about. But what we mean by this is, if, for example, we have a problem with resource availability, we need to understand how that impacts the project. We might just need to reschedule some resources. But if the same kinds of capability, the same kinds of skill set are no longer available to us in the time frame we require them, we might need to go all the way back to redoing our work breakdown structure in the definition phase. Because if we redo the work in a different way, it may be possible to use slightly less qualified or differently qualified resources to achieve the same end result. So the thing to do always is ask the question, what's happening, what else, and then look at the project structure and think, which parts of our definition and planning phase do we need to adjust in response to this particular challenge or threat? Let's have a look at an example of situation appraisal applied to some project difficulties. And I'm not going to talk a lot about this, just have you read what's here. So on the left, the concerns, just two for the sake of the example. In your own project troubles, you might have quite a long list of concerns. And then a little clarification. Why do we need to worry about the things in the first column? And then to understand the impact. Now, quite often people say it's a disaster. And my challenge to them, particularly in projects, is what actually is the impact on the project quality or budget right now? And the answer is often none. Not yet. It will be very bad if we don't fix it in time, but right now, today, we haven't yet felt the impact. And I think it's useful to distinguish between the current impact on project progress and the future impact. Then by deadline, I mean, what's the point beyond which we are in trouble? We will either have to spend more money or we will have to delay things. So this deadline is often the start of the deliverable that the issue or concern relates to. Sometimes it's the end of that deliverable. That's when we have to have fixed the issue by. So having a structure like this, I think our experience is it takes a lot of the heat, a lot of the emotion, a lot of the stress out of the conversation, because we're just saying, ladies and gentlemen, what's happening? What else is happening? We get the list, we clarify the list, we understand the impact, and then we figure out what we're going to do about it. So if you haven't been using situation appraisal for your project reviews, maybe today is the time to start. Those of you who've attended KT problem-solving classes, you should be able to access a My KT account using the code on the inside front cover of your class book, and you'll be able to pick up templates for situation appraisal as well as the others in the My KT space. Let's talk about understanding the impact a little bit more. If you look at project plans, typically your Gantt chart will be a beautiful cascade of deliverables, one following the other. But when trouble strikes, you're going to need to get into the detail behind this really neat looking Gantt chart. I always despair when I see a project plan that looks like this, because I think it looks too neat and real life is messy and agile and difficult. So I always worry when somebody shows me this is our project plan. I think, okay, that's not going to happen. We need to look at the detail. And particularly when there is a mess and we need to recover from that mess, we need to absolutely look behind what's in those green bars. So if we look at what the green bars represent, this is an example. Deliverable 1, needs analysis completed. Deliverable 2, prototypes developed. Technical testing completed, or double word there, user acceptance testing completed. So that's what the cascade represents. And if, for example, we are told that resources are not available because another project is taking them, we need to kind of understand what's involved in that deliverable, because when you look at these long bars, which may be many days long, sometimes many weeks long, people are not really working continuously during that whole phase. They're doing other things. So it's good to ask what's involved in that deliverable and add that to our situation appraisal. And then if you look at this example and you unpack it and you unpack deliverable 1, you see that actually user needs analysis completed involves sending some surveys. The surveys are returned, the interviews are done, the process review is done, and the design criteria have been completed. But there are gaps. There are significant gaps in that, and whatever resources are involved in deliverable 1, we could take for certain periods of time. Sometimes people tell us, you know, there's a testing phase of 30 days, and we need the people for 30 days. And I know perfectly well that they set the tests up on day 1, they run them for 28 days, and then they evaluate what happened. But in the middle, 27 days, they're not actually being used. So often we can find where there are resources and possibilities to get what we need by unpacking the work breakdown structure, unpacking the Gantt chart. But then we need to do something about it. And we particularly need to worry about things like scope changes, because often people ask us for greater functionality in the process we're designing, in the systems we're developing, in the products we're developing. Stakeholders groups expand. New people in the stakeholder group want new things, which can lead us to rework of existing designs or products. And that's a lot of extra work. And we need to then to revisit the work breakdown structure and start to think what needs to be added or taken away. And in order to make that judgment, we're probably going to need to use decision analysis. So decision analysis is the KT process for making a choice. And what we're trying to do then is understand what the requirements are and what the best fit solution is likely to be. And our first step, of course, is to clarify purpose. What is the goal? And the first step within clarifying purpose is to agree the decision statement. So typically when we're asked for a scope change, we're not given a choice. We're not given the choice to push back and say, boss, we're not doing it. We're not given that choice. So we have to find a way. So first thing is to clarify the business objectives and goals, and then use some creative techniques to produce a range of options. Now, we're not going to go into creativity in this short space, but there is a separate webcast on creative decision making sitting on the website. If you Google KT webcast series, you'll find it in there. One thing to say about creating options is that it will often help to clarify the business objectives to include some unacceptable options, things that you know the executives are really going to hate in your analysis, to provide a kind of baseline or reference point that they can push against in order to create a superior solution. And here is a scope change decision example for you. So here is a KT decision analysis form, and I'll leave you to read that for just a moment before I talk. So now, we have a decision statement at the top. We want to incorporate social media feeds in the customer tracking tool. We want to understand customers' online behavior in great detail in order to drive sales. And specifically, we want to shorten the sales cycle from 4 visits by a customer to 2. That brings it down to an average of 6.7 days between the time they first click on our website and when they make the purchase. So we've got some goals on the left-hand side, and you'll see that the goals have been weighted. So we have to have a discussion with the executive or the stakeholder and say, well, what's important, what's less important? minimize impact to other projects. In this case, the executive has judged is half as important as providing assistance to marketing in increasing this sales trajectory or speed to purchase. And we've got 3 solutions on offer in this example where we've said, okay, how good is each of these solutions in meeting the goals in the objectives column? And we've given a performance score out of 10 to each of the solutions. So the one which is best gets a 10, the one which is worst will get a lower score. And what we're saying here is the score of 1 means it's exactly 10% as good as the one which is getting a score of 10 for that specific goal. And once we've weighted the score, multiplied the score by the weight, then we have a winner. In this case, not a clear winner. Both solution 2 and 3 appear to be significantly superior to solution 1. So we can use decision analysis relatively quickly to make some decisions about incorporating new things into our project, or indeed how we handle other project challenges. So I'd encourage you to get your decision analysis or DA cards out when you need to make those kind of calls. So as we get to the end of our time, I've slightly overrun, and sorry for that. Whatever the trouble in your project, always start with a quick situation appraisal. It will always add clarity to what you need to do, and it will always take the emotion down. And then start to use DA or decision analysis to find options for accommodating the changes. Something I haven't discussed, but I think is really important, redo your potential problem analysis or your risk plan, because when you make changes, you may be injecting new risks into the project, and not to say you haven't to change things, but at least be aware of the risks and have a mitigation plan ready for handling them if they do hit.